Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back here at the Technical Forum at the group exhibit Hydrogen, Fuel Cells and Batteries. I invite you all to come and have a seat, have a coffee or a tea. The drinks are all in the house. There's a lovely lady walking around serving you with the drinks. And my name is Mona and I will be your moderator for the day. I would like to make an announcement for the next topic. We have merged the topics, so the 11 o'clock presentation of NOW and the 11:20 presentation of NOW has been merged. So for that also, I would like to say hello to all our online guests. Our next presentation will be roughly 30 minutes. We will hear information regarding the regulatory framework for alternative fuel infrastructure and the state of transportation in Germany. So for that, please welcome with me on stage Program Manager of Transport and Infrastructure of the NOW, Mr. Philipp Braunsdorf. Big hands, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I will talk at the same time like the Ministry of Transport, who will finally announce federal measures to support the sale of electric vehicles. We can all be curious about the details. You decided to follow this presentation about the regulatory framework for alternative fuels infrastructure and the state of transposition in Germany. As said, for organizational reason and contrary to the official program, there will be only one presentation by NOW. In the first part, I will focus on the regulatory framework given by the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive. In the second part, I will report the current status of transposition by the German federal government. The presentation is, as you like, part of the transposition itself by sharing information with our stakeholder. The presentation will be probably a little shorter, giving the audience the opportunity for comments and questions at any time. So, this is the agenda. I will start with the motivation. What is the motivation to set a regulatory framework for alternative fuels and infrastructure? It's obvious the ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are a powerful driver. Not mentioning the COP21 results from Paris, Germany has been committing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions up to 95% until 2050 in the transportation sector, to increase the share of renewables significantly and to decrease the final energy consumption in this sector by 40% compared to 2005. These targets are, as I said, ambitious. However, they are congruent with the EU legislation. What is the German government doing to reach these aims? Thank you. There's the National Innovation Program, Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technology. NIP is intended to speed up the process of market preparation of products based on fuel cell and hydrogen technology. The total budget of NIP invested over a period of 10 years until 2016 amounts to 1.4 billion euro. The Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure and the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy provide half of this sum, while the balance is funded by participating industry. Besides large-scale demonstration projects, NIP also focuses on research and development projects. The demonstration projects are grouped into comprehensive lighthouse projects and take place under real conditions. Project partners thus work together and more efficiently on issues and challenges which they otherwise would have to face alone and with considerable individual effort. On EU level, I may mention the funding sectors as well. There are a number of European programs to fund renewables and alternative fuels in transportation sector. I just want to pick two of them because of the relevance for the deployment of infrastructure. The Connecting Europe facility is funding TEN-T projects and focuses on the inter-European mobility across 9 corridors and different modes of transports. The TEN-T forms the backbone of the European transport system. The fuel cell and hydrogen joint undertaking is a special initiative by the Commission, the industry and research institutions to develop hydrogen technologies, including the installation of refueling stations throughout Europe. As I said, there are a number of other programs. I just want to skip them for now. EU legislation. When we look to the legislation concerning alternative fuels, the first focus by EU authorities was to set standards on emission performances for all kinds of fuels. The regulation of alternative fuels and their infrastructure started in the last, let's say, 3 years. And there were 3 directives. I will mention the Fuels Quality Directive, FQL, and the Renewable Energy Directive. And for today, explicitly, the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive addressing the deployment of appropriate networks for alternative fuels in Europe. Today, as I said, I will focus on infrastructure, not mentioning the importance and the relevance of the former 2 directives. So, what is the history of the Aphid? Starting point of the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive was the Clean Power in Transport package. The EU was communicating an alternative fuel strategy and delivering a draft directive. This was finalized by publishing the Aphid in 2014. The directive is demanding a national policy framework by every member state. This policy framework should be addressing the infrastructure of electricity, hydrogen, LNG, CNG for transport. Each member state is ordered to deliver the national policy framework until November 18th this year, with a regular monitoring in the following years. Additional to the directive, it foresees the use of common technical specifications for recharging and refueling stations. And it paves the way for setting up appropriate consumer information on alternative fuels, including a clear and sound priced comparison methodology. So, the national policy framework is including an assessment of the state of play and future market development of each infrastructure, national targets and objectives, and measures to reach targets and measures. Member states are prompted to coordinate the process of creating the national policy framework to ensure inter-European mobility and a coherent deployment process for all infrastructure networks mentioned. Member states define an appropriate number of refueling and recharging points, minimal technical requirements, and details about consumer information concerning alternative fuels. There are different time limits for every alternative fuel and field of application, as you can see on the slide. So this is the context within the federal government is writing the national policy framework. I would now start to give a short report of the work already done. If you have any questions at this point, you can feel to raise your hand. This is not the point. Okay, so I will follow the presentation. Just a word about NOW, the National Organization of Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technology. NOW is assisting the federal government in this process of writing and preparing the national policy framework. So we are close with the federal government in this area. I will start with electricity. Just a short introduction into the state of play. We have around 5,600 normal recharging points at this moment, and there are 1,500 fast or high power recharging points planned or in operation. Planned in the sense there are projects running to install these stations. The objectives, or let's say state of play vehicles, we have 37,600 electric vehicles last year. Objective for 2020 is we want to have 7,000 high power recharging points and 36,000 normal charging points. And as you know, the target of 1 million electrically powered vehicles in 2020 is still going on. These numbers are current to the prospect by the National Platform Electromobility. We are now at a crucial point, as you can see. No, it's not working. In the following years, with the run-up of vehicles, there will be huge demand for recharging points, and there will be a rollout of points, obviously. This will take place in a structured way, so we start at the mobility arteries like Autobahn and so on. Installation of high power recharging points by Tank und Rast, for example, with financial assistance by Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure, and further deployment through SLAM. It's a project for high power recharging points, and 10T projects, as I mentioned before. Next step are the rural areas. So alongside coverage of the arteries, high power recharging infrastructure also needs to be expanded in rural areas, for example, federal highways and at supply centers. There will also be hotspots for taxis and car sharing in major urban areas. Then for 2020, the objective is area-wide infrastructure which meets customer needs for convenient electric mobility. Hydrogen, it's a little different picture. We have this period by NIP, 2006 to 2016. The task was to secure technological basis and meet conditions for ramp-up. There's a number of 50 stations which has to be built until 2016. We are not right at this number, as you heard yesterday, but I will talk about that later. The next step is a basic coverage for Germany with 100 stations. After 2020, there will be a market run-up with 400 stations. And after 25, we hope to have a working market, and at the end of this period, 1,000 stations. Until 2020, the run-up or build-up of stations will be independent of vehicles. After that period, stations will be built dependent on the vehicles right in the region. So if there are regions with high demand, there will be more stations, and there may be regions where the demand is low, so there will be not so many stations. This is a picture which is illustrating it once more for the deployment of hydrogen refueling stations in accordance with H2 mobility. I will come to that later too. We define 3 phases of the run-up. We are currently at the end of phase 1, as I said, encompassed by the National Innovation Program. 50 stations are securely financed. They are built or will be built as research and development stations, accompanied by comprehensive studies with economical, technical, and ecological focuses, and the issues acceptance and permission optimization. Next step will be in fact the build-up of a preliminary overcapacity of stations from 2016 to 2020. 100 stations will be the basis for an independent market development by H2 Mobility and other actors. This realization will not be related to certified fuel cell vehicles. As I said, after 2020 there will be a dependence on vehicles. So, 50 station program. We are now at the number of 20 around. And to be honest, we are not worrying about the number, because we always said that this program is for research and development. So we want to learn how we can build the station, what kind of technology is working. We want to work together with the authorities to get the permissions process faster and optimized. So this is all what we wanted to do. There don't have to be 50 stations at the end, but we hope that it will be around 50 stations. What is worrying us is this kind of a gap right in the center of Germany. So we don't have stations right now in the center of Germany, and this is not a good case for mobility inside of Germany, but also for the corridors of to operate inter-European mobility. So we need to close this gap, and this is work which has to be done in the next years. And then I come to the next point, H2 mobility. I already mentioned it. It's a joint venture of 6 industrial partners and started operation in the beginning of 2015. The purpose of the company is the progressive rollout of hydrogen refueling stations in Germany. At the end of the day, there shall be the first national supply network for hydrogen worldwide. The founding of H2 Mobility was closely accompanied by the federal government. The Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure promised further support. H2 Mobility wants to operate 400 stations in 2023. So that's a target by the company itself, and the industry always committed to this number, and yeah. TEN-T, I already mentioned. So there are 9 corridors through Europe, and they have to be covered by electromobility as well. And there will be funding to close gaps like the gap in central Germany. There will be a monitoring of the directive in the years after 2016, and these are the issues. Yeah, I already mentioned. So these are the next steps. We're writing a draft of the national policy framework in the last month, and are concluding the policy framework, the draft version, in the next weeks. and then we will initiate a department coordination process in May. Then we will include in June, we will include the member states, which are also working on national policy frameworks, to get them coordinated within the government support group. And then in early July 2016, there will be a departmental coordination process of the national policy framework. We will finalize the work on it, and in October we will refer the national policy framework to the cabinet. In November it will be transmitted to the Commission. So that's the plan, and that's my presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braunsdorf, for giving us an insight on how the hydrogen infrastructure is doing in Germany. Are there any questions from the audience at this time? That is good for me, because I do have a question, Mr. Braunsdorf.
Yes.
So you mentioned that we have a movement in Germany regarding transitioning the infrastructure. So there are two approaches currently. We have the e-mobility based on electric cars, and also we have the hydrogen cars. So are these competing movements, or is it going in one direction?
From the point of view of the federal government, these two technologies are combining very well. So every technology has their positive side or negative side, as you may name it. So we think that we have to be open in both ways, and to develop both paths. So this is what we do. NOW is working on fuel cell technology as well as battery electric technology.
Thank you very much. Thank you also to all online guests that have been watching here. If you have more questions, then you can take the questions to the booth of NOW at E51 or B56. Okay, thank you very much. And okay, Mr. Braunsdorf can be visited there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next presentation will be at 11:40, so we'll have a short break here in the technical forum. We'll talk about from hydrogen mobility, we will go to CHP plants, combined heat and power, and for that we'll hear the Manager of Business Development of Fuel Cell Energy, Mr. Martin Ohmer. That will be in a short break in only 15 minutes time. Thank you.